Sat Shri Akal. Very happy and honoured to be here today at Gurdwara Aid conference. I've been working with Gurdwara for over 25 years, joined at a very young age. Never really had any support or guidance. Since we've been working with Gurdwara Aid, we have got support throughout the COVID period. Very, very pivotal for us in opening our Gurdwara's risk assessment. Everything we didn't know, we got to, and today's conference was just so enlightening. We have board members from our team and they were so engaged listening into where we need to be. It did show a massive gap within our structures at our Gurdwara, our policies, our paperwork. We're very good at entertaining our Sangat and looking after our Sangat, but where we are under charity commissions, under the governance, it's very important we set up in the correct way. And what we have today and what Gurdwara Aid is providing to each Gurdwara, it's a humble request for all other committee members to definitely look at their website, come and join and pick up this information. Definitely needed in each of our Gurdwara. So a big shout out to Gurdwara Aid and the work they're doing.
When we're thinking about safeguarding, the great work that you want to do, whilst it may have good intentions, you need to make sure that you're not putting anyone at risk in order to pursue that. You do need to be prepared in case things go wrong. So we don't expect perfection from trustees. We know that in the life cycle of a charity, things can and will arise that are beyond your control, no matter how much risk management you've done. But it's being prepared for when those things happen, that you've got plans in place to manage the situation. It may be reporting it to the Commission or elsewhere. Today, obviously, it's fantastic to see so many of you here today committed to exploring good governance. And I should say that the number of cases we have at the Charity Commission is minute in comparison to the overall sector. Most charities will have limited engagement with us as the regulator, but where things do go wrong, we do try and share those lessons to benefit wider charities.
Today's conference was fantastic. It was more in-depth. It highlighted the issues that we're facing within our communities, within our Gurdwaras, and also identifying the areas of particular interest for all of us to follow, how we should improve, and what services are available for us to go forward and move on. Part of the Croydon Gurdwara, we've been using SFI since 2019 and 2020. I have used them for my processes, for my training, and I feel fantastic that I've managed to get become a safe centre. The only thing I've got left is the first aid course, but due to COVID, we weren't getting the first aid training because they have to actually come on site. But overall, this event has been fantastic. I think it'll be better that more Gurdwaras get involved and actually come to this because this is a well-needed event. Thank you. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
The land registry will tell you who, quotes, owns your land on behalf of the Gurdwara. And it's important that they have their records updated.
What has the Charity Commission done or brought about changes? Because I speak from personal communication with the Commission. My experience is that the Commission actually, rather than aiding, it made things difficult for the organisation because their responses are very vague. They weren't, in some instances correct. The consequences of it were that the organisation then went into a free fall, etc., etc. So, just to sort of shorten it, my question is, can you pinpoint what have the Commission done, say in the last 5 years, in order to put their house in order so they actually intervene, advise, take steps, so our good governance is actually rewarded? Thank you.
Obviously, firstly, apologies for the experience you've had. It's not something I would say I sort of recognise as such from my experience more widely, but I do understand the challenges that you've faced, and we ourselves, of course, are held to account So our decisions can of course be challenged, and where they are found to be invalid, then action will be taken. But also we are held accountable to Parliament, and we have laws that we must follow and comply with. But I think the Charity Commission is trying to do what it can to support the sector. So rather than just sort of regulating, also trying to empower. So one of the aspects that I talked about is our new 5-minute guide. So trying to make sure that our advice doesn't need a lawyer to be understood. We're trying to make the expectations and the good practice that we want to see from the sector understandable, accessible. So we've got this range of new 5-minute guides which talk about the key principles. But then of course you've got our team who are there specifically to provide proactive support to faith charities specifically.
I'm from the Management Committee, Sri Guru Singh Sabha Hounslow, and this is the second time I've attended this conference. The first one was just before the lockdown, and both of them very, very useful events and a lot of information on all the badly needed subjects at the moment, especially disputes as well as safeguarding. We need to start again, so a lot of information there, and also a lot of legal information on other matters.
We talk about safeguarding in the realms of charity law and your trustee duties, so where that fits in with safeguarding. So our guidance says, as part of fulfilling your trustee duties, you must take reasonable steps to protect from harm people, all adults and children, who come into contact with your charity. And also for the Charity Commission, safeguarding is much wider than just adults and children, vulnerable adults and children. It's about protecting everybody who comes into contact with your charity through its work. And we expect trustees to be promoting an open and positive culture so that people feel safe to report any concerns and feel confident in the knowledge that those concerns are going to be dealt with appropriately and efficiently. And we do expect you to be taking responsibility as trustees, to be taking responsibility for preventing any harm to anyone who comes into contact with your charity, and for putting things right if there is harm that happens as part of your activities. And we also need to make sure that your charity has suitable health and safety arrangements, first aid, fire safety and digital safety policies that everyone understands. I think that's key here, that they're widely available. People know how to use them, know where to find them, know what they need to do if something goes wrong. Welfare, discipline and whistleblowing policies for staff, if you have them, and a complaints process for users and others with concerns.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Dr. Kulwant Singh Chitta from Kentram Gurdwara in Gillingham, Kent, part of the Medway Towns Gurdwara Council as well. I'm delighted to be here at the National Gurdwara Council. The conference has been excellent, organised by Gurdwara Aid, as has been in the past as well. The Charity Commission, the law aspect, and the importance of DBS, and also organising the constitutional changes to encompass for the future safeguarding in all Gurdwaras. And it is very important for any upcoming trustees and management staff to be listening into, and for all Gurdwaras to be sending their delegates for the next year to the National Gurdwara Conference. Thank you very much. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
So I'm going to talk a bit about the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse. Obviously quite a, I don't know how else to describe it, a difficult topic. The sort of history of it, it was set up in 2014 by the Home Secretary at that time, Theresa May, following a lot of concern about institutional child abuse. And you'd had the Jimmy Savile case, and there were also a number of institutional figures, including sort of mainstream celebrities, people like Rolf Harris, Max Clifford, others, being identified as having committed sexual abuse. And so there was wider cross-party support for an investigation. It was set up in 2014. but I think it's fair to say it had a few challenges to start off with, changed its chair a couple of times, and in 2015 it was more formally set up under the Inquiries Act, which gave it additional powers as a statutory inquiry.
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਜੋ ਕਾਨਫਰੰਸ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਏਡ ਨੇ ਅੱਜ ਬੁਲਾਈ ਸੰਗਤਾਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ, ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਗੁਰੂ ਘਰ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰਬੰਧਕਾਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਵਧੀਆ ਸੀ। ਅੱਜ ਮੌਕਾ ਮਿਲਿਆ to understand ਕੀ ਰਿਸਪੌਂਸਿਬਿਲਿਟੀਜ਼ ਹੈ ਫॉर ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਟਰਸਟੀਜ਼, ਹੋਲਡਿੰਗ ਟਰਸਟੀਜ਼, ਕੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਮੇਵਾਰੀਆਂ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਬਣਦੀਆਂ ਸੰਗਤ ਦੀ ਵਧੀਆ ਤੋਂ ਵਧੀਆ ਸੇਵਾ ਕਰਨ। ਗੁਰੂ ਘਰ ਆਪਣੇ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਦੀ UK ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡੀ ਇੰਸਟੀਟਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਆ, ਲਗਭਗ 250 ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ UK ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੈ। ਪਿਛਲੇ 30, 40, 50 ਸਾਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਾਂ ਦੇਖੋ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਵਧੀਆ ਗੁਰੂ ਅਸਥਾਨ ਬਣਾਏ, ਪਰ ਉਸ ਅਸਥਾਨ ਨੂੰ ਚਲਾਉਣ ਵਧੀਆ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜੋ ਇੱਥੇ ਦੇ ਕਾਨੂੰਨ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, ਇੱਥੇ ਦੇ ਜੋ ਪ੍ਰੋਸੈਸਿਸ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, ਉਹ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਨਵੋਲਵ ਕਰਨੇ ਪੈਣੇ ਆ। ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ the Charities Commission when it comes to safeguarding, when it comes to ensuring ਕਿ ਸਾਡੀ ਸੰਗਤ ਸੇਫ ਆ। ਸੋ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਜੋ ਕਾਨਫਰੰਸ ਇੱਥੇ SFI Strengthening Faith Institutions ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵੀ ਭਾਗ ਲਿਆ। ਇੱਥੇ ਜੋ ਇੱਕ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕੀਤੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਜੋ ਪਹਿਲੀ ਕਾਨਫਰੰਸ ਸੀ ਉੱਥੇ ਡਿਸਕਸ਼ਨ ਹੋਈ ਸੀ to create an arbitration board, ਉਹ ਅੱਜ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੋਈ ਆ to take that work forward। ਸੋ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਏਡ ਜੋ ਗੁਰੂ ਘਰਾਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਇੱਕ ਸੰਸਥਾ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ, ਇਹ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਕਾਨਫਰੰਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਾਫੀ ਯੋਗਦਾਨ ਪਾਇਆ to help ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰੇ। ਇਹ ਜੋ ਕੰਮ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ, ਇਹੀ ਕੰਮ ਆਪਾਂ in the Midlands and North West ਆਪਾਂ ਕਾਨਫਰੰਸ ਕਰਨੀ ਆ to ensure ਜਿਹੜੇ ਗੁਰੂ ਘਰ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ that they have the right tools to ensure the ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰੇ ਸਹੀ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ, ਵਧੀਆ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਹ ਜੋ ਪ੍ਰਬੰਧ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਚੱਲੇ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।
My name's Shadish. I am a women's rights activist. I've been working in the domestic abuse sector for over 26 years now, and I am the service director for Sikh Women's Aid. So Sikh Women's Aid is a newly formed organisation. We launched only last year in April. However, our work stems back much further than that. We've been working with the Sikh and Punjabi community since 2014. We set up because having worked in the sector for such a long time, I identified that we weren't having many Sikh Punjabi women coming forward to report abuse. I've run refuge provision, outreach services, and I'm from Birmingham, and we know it's probably one of the most super diverse cities in the country, and yet we weren't seeing women from our own community reporting abuse, and that's one of the reasons we set up. There was a secondary reason we set up, and that was because child sexual exploitation and grooming became a hot topic back in 2014, and there were no female-led organisations providing professional support and services to victims, and we wanted to give women and girls an opportunity to come to a female-led organisation to access that support.
I have been delighted to have been a part of the second Gurdwara Aid conference this year. So we gave a keynote speech into domestic violence and sexual violence in the Sikh community, but against a backdrop of safeguarding in faith-based settings. I think if I was going to take one thing away from today's event, it has been connecting with Gurdwara committees and seeing that there is a real appetite for change in the way safeguarding and safeguarding disclosures are managed, and that for me is really, really heartwarming going forward. So I really look forward to the work that Gurdwara Aid is going to do going forward, and I look forward to working with them and the Gurdwaras underneath their organisation to really create sustainable and long-lasting change for our upcoming generation of Sikh and Punjabi children. Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh.
Initially, Sikhs are split into two main groups. You'll have baptised Sikhs, then you'll have non-baptised Sikhs who will visit the Gurdwara, will align themselves with the faith but not necessarily take the baptism. Baptised Sikhs are initiated by 5 male priests, and the process is absolutely voluntary. to become a baptized Sikh, there is no force or compulsion. It is within the faith. It's something that you do willingly and you choose. And once you are baptized, a Sikh is declared a Khalsa and he's bound by a rehet, which is a code of conduct to ensure the highest standards. I want listeners to hang on to that as we start progressing through case studies, because it's important to have the faith context discussed here. What does the faith say about this, and where are we as a community, and how far have we moved away from the faith? So this is probably one of the most famous female empowerment quotes that are taken from Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, which is our living scriptures. It is called a living scripture because you take the word as an instruction. The instruction is meant to be implemented in your life and bring about a change in behavior. So this is a male, our first founding male guru, talking in his own voice, giving the role and stature to women. And here, and a lot of things I've noticed during my study of Sikh faith is that the way we speak to our women, the way we listen to our women is given very, very high status. Why should we talk ill of her who gives birth to kings? It really defines the role of women in society as the birthers, as the creators, as the mothers, and it celebrates that role.
This has been an amazing conference. Basically, it's brought people together in a real live way. You can't get it during the whole Zoom COVID experience, but here we are with a real engagement, asking real questions, and we feel like there's so much work to be done and such a willingness to do it around safeguarding, around supporting these communities. All the issues that people have been talking about, now it feels from this conference is real tangible activity that we can take away and work together. And that's amazing, that institutions are willing to work together, learn from best practice, and grow as Gurdwaras, as places of worship, and to serve their community, not just their own individual members, but the wider community. It's so beautiful to see. It's a service to the world, and it's a real honor to be part of what Gurdwara Aid put together today.
It happened to a friend of mine, a rabbinical colleague who was involved with Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. Do you know about the case? Yeah. So his community, his synagogue, the basement was just ruined, flooded, ruined. He called his community together later on, and he pulled them into a room much like this. And he says, "Friends, I have some very, very bad news. But then I have some good news, and then again I have some bad news." So everyone says, "What's the bad news?" He says, "As you know, our basement of a synagogue is entirely ruined. And it's going to take millions and millions of dollars to fix it up with all the water damage." And there's an audible sigh. Everyone's upset. He says, "But don't worry. The good news is we have all the money we need to fix that basement." And everyone begins to cheer. And it's like, "Well, okay, what's the bad news?" And they say, my colleague, the rabbi, says, "The bad news is the money to fix the basement of your synagogue is in your pockets right now." When it comes to what we've seen today, I think we can sort of say, without making too many jokes about it, that there's something very similar. We've seen the bad news. As Nick brought forward with the ICSA report, it's not one particular community, it's all the faith communities. To quote them on the independent inquiry, are morally failing our children. Morally failing our children every step. Lack of policies, lack of people, lack of professional care for those we care most about, our futures. As we heard from Sikh Women's Aid, the bad news is that we're not moving fast enough to make the changes we need to make that will protect and guide our children, our most vulnerable people, our communities going forward. I'm not a stranger in the Gurdwara. I'm welcomed in. I'm offered food. I'm treated like an honored guest. When my son and I came to the Croydon Gurdwara, he wanted to stay. I couldn't pull him out. He wanted to be there, sitting there, listening. He felt warm and invited. But along with that, sometimes we let our guards down. It feels like a home. It feels like our own living room. It feels like a place where we're safe. Along with that level of safety, we have to earn that safety.
A lot of the things that I am going to talk about are following on from what Nick said, what Natan said around culture, embedding an effective safeguarding culture. We have our branding is very good at strengthening faith institutions, so we do use the same keywords, but that's done on purpose just so we can ensure that you guys, when we do present to you, when you do speak to a member of staff, you know exactly what actions you need to do to ensure that your congregants at Gurdwaras are safe.
What is dispute resolution? I mean, it's the fundamental causes of litigation are in fact a lot of issues which have already been discussed today, and it comes to a process where the analogy I would use is this: what we've heard today are things that maybe in a medical term your doctor may say to you, if you do this you will not have high cholesterol, if you do this you will not have diabetes, if you do this. What you've been hearing today is a health check for you as organisations, and frankly for us as a community, as to what we can be doing better to avoid us having problems later on. If you've come to me, you've had all the jalebia, you've had all the samosa, you haven't had any exercise, and there is a problem. So that is what dispute resolution is. This is when you have not followed what is going to be best practice in terms of safeguarding, in terms of training, in terms of knowing what your constitution says. If you don't follow those things, it has not gone well. But that is why I'm here. So these kinds of issues, lack of financial transparency. We have, for example, a Gurdwara where the spending on Punjabi classes has gone from low hundreds to several thousands following a change of committee. There are questions being asked, understandably. Governance, I think we've spoken about that at great length, and we've had some wonderful support from the Charity Commission and SFI in terms of what we can be doing. The last one I would point out is very important. When issues are raised, what is the quality of engagement or response from the committee? If there is little engagement, or if that engagement is dismissive or insincere, you may ultimately find there are consequences for that. Whereas having a very direct dialogue, and even if that dialogue is to say, okay, we hear what you're saying, we may not have done this right, but let's work together to find a solution. We need as a community and as committee members to have that humility to accept that if someone has come to us, we need to look at ourselves honestly and say, well, look, if there's a problem, how do we fix it? The danger of what happens, and it happens in a lot of situations, is it becomes a them and us. As Suki was saying about the domestic violence situation, that them and us is very dangerous. So we have to be alert to that.